I gave my daughter a house, hoping that it would be her happy home. But that same day, her husband, James, brought his family, and they forced her to serve them as if she were a stranger in her own home. Their smiles shone with gloating, but I swore I would wipe it off their faces. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. My phone buzzed, and I nearly dropped the pen. Emily's voice came through in a whisper, fractured, like glass about to shatter. "Dad," James says, he says the house isn't what he expected. In the background, his voice cut through, sharp and mocking. "Not my taste, Em. You know that." My grip tightened, the pen's plastic creaking under my fingers. The notary, a gray-haired woman with a practiced smile, slid the final document across the desk. I forced a nod, signing my name in a jagged scrawl. The office smelled of stale coffee and paper dust. A fluorescent lamp hummed overhead, casting a sickly glow on the stacks of folders cluttering the desk. My heart pounded, but I kept my face still. Emily's call had come at the worst moment, right as I was finalizing the gift I'd spent years planning, a house for her, my daughter, the one thing I could give to make her life brighter. I'd sold half my engineering firm to afford it, a modern two-story in Stamford with big windows and a garden she'd love. But James, her husband, was already tainting it. "Dad, I'm sorry," Emily whispered. "He's just stressed." Her voice trembled, and I pictured her standing in that half-furnished kitchen, clutching her phone, her brown eyes wide with worry. I wanted to tell her to leave him, to walk away, but I swallowed the words. Not today. Not when I was about to hand her the keys. "It's fine, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "You focus on settling in. I'll be there soon." I hung up, my thumb lingering on the screen. The notary raised an eyebrow, but I ignored her, signing the last page. The keys sat on the desk, their metal burlap engraved with Emily glinting under the light. They felt cold in my palm, like a chunk of ice, heavy with hope and dread. 10 years ago, after my wife died, I promised myself Emily would never want for anything. I saw her at 8, sketching her dream house on a diner napkin, big windows, a porch, flowers everywhere. That memory drove me to this moment, through late nights at the firm, through deals that cost me friends. I'd trusted too many people back then, partners who'd bled me dry, but this house, was something pure. Or it was supposed to be. The notary cleared her throat. "Congratulations, Mr. Collins. It's official." She handed me the deed, crisp and heavy. I tucked it into my jacket, next to my heart. "Thank you," I said, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying James's voice. "Not my taste." What did that even mean? The house was perfect, white walls, hardwood floors, a garden where Emily could plant her roses. If he didn't like it, that was his problem. But I knew it wouldn't stay that way. Not with him. I stepped outside, the March air biting at my knuckles. Stamford streets were quiet, the sky a dull gray. My car was parked across from the notary's office, but I didn't move. Instead, I pulled out the keys again, running my thumb over the engraving. Emily deserved this. She'd always been kind, too kind, even when James started showing his true colors, his sharp comments, his way of making her feel small. I'd ignored it too long, trusting she'd handle it. But that call, her voice wasn't right. My phone buzzed again, a text from Emily. "We're at the house. Can you come now?" I typed a quick reply, my fingers stiff. "On my way." I slid into the car, the leather creaking under my weight, and started the engine. The drive to her place was short, but my mind raced. I saw her at 16, laughing as we painted her bedroom in my old cottage. I saw her at 25, nervous but happy when she introduced me to James. I hadn't liked him then, too polished, too quick with his charm, but I'd kept quiet. For her. The house came into view, its windows catching the weak sunlight. Emily stood in the driveway, her coat pulled tight against the wind. Her smile was faint, almost forced, as she waved. I parked and stepped out, the keys heavy in my pocket. "Dad," she said, rushing to hug me. Her arms were warm, but her hands trembled. I held her tight, feeling the weight of her worry. "It's yours now," I said, pressing the keys into her palm. She looked down at them, her fingers curling slowly, like she wasn't sure she deserved it. "Thank you," she whispered, but her eyes flicked toward the house, where James's car was parked, its trunk open, boxes spilling out. Her smile faded, and my stomach twisted. I wanted to ask about the call, about James, but her expression stopped me. Instead, I squeezed her shoulder. "Let's go inside," I said. She nodded, gripping the keys so tightly her knuckles whitened. As we walked toward the door, the garden's flowers swayed in the breeze, their petals bright against the gray. I told myself this was her fresh start. But her hesitant steps, the way she glanced back at James's car, they told a different story. The front door slammed, and Olivia's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "This kitchen's too small. Honestly, Emily, did you even look at this place?" I wasn't there, but I could picture it, Emily standing frozen, her hands twisting a dish towel, while James's mother barked orders. I was back at my cottage in Greenwich, pacing the living room, when Emily called. Her voice was tight, like she was holding her breath. "They're settling in," she said, but the tremor in her words told me everything. I'd left her at the house an hour ago, after handing over the keys. She'd hugged me, her smile brittle, and I'd driven home with a knot in my gut. Now, sitting on my warm leather couch, I gripped the phone, imagining the chaos unfolding. "Settling in how?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Emily hesitated. "It's just a lot of boxes. Olivia's particular about where things go." A crash echoed in the background, followed by James's laugh. "Careful, Em. Don't break my stuff." My jaw clenched. I pictured the house, its clean white walls now streaked with fingerprints, its hardwood floors scuffed by boots. The garden outside, Emily's pride, probably trampled by movers. "Are you okay?" I asked. She forced a laugh, thin and unconvincing. "Fine, Dad. Just busy." But I heard Olivia's voice again, sharp, "Emily, the coffee's cold already." The call ended abruptly, and I stared at the phone, my pulse hammering. I sank back, my mind filling in the gaps. I saw Emily in that kitchen, her hair tied back, trying to play hostess while James's family treated her like a stranger. Olivia, with her clicking heels and cold eyes, would be directing movers like a general, her coffee cup untouched. James would be sprawled on the couch, tossing his jacket wherever it landed, his smirk daring Emily to complain. And Emily, my Emily, would be scurrying to please them, her shoulders hunched, her voice small. I remembered the day we toured the house, just the two of us. She'd run her fingers along the countertops, her eyes bright. "I'll plant roses out back," she'd said, pointing to the garden. "And we'll have dinners here, Dad. You'll come every Sunday." That was the Emily I knew, hopeful, full of plans. But marriage to James had dimmed her, like a bulb burning out. I should have seen it sooner. My phone buzzed, a text from Emily. "Can you call later? Things are hectic." I typed of course, but my fingers hovered over the keys. I wanted to drive back, to barge in and demand answers, but I stayed put. She'd asked for space, and I'd give it. For now. Instead, I stood and walked to the window, staring at the quiet street. My cottage was small, cluttered with photos of Emily, her graduation, her wedding, her childhood drawings. One sketch, framed on the wall, showed her dream house. I'd made it real, but at what cost? Back at her place, I imagined the scene unfolding. Boxes blocked the hallway, their flaps torn open, spilling clothes and dishes. Olivia would be criticizing everything: the curtains, too cheap, the lighting, too dim, even the smell of fresh paint. James's sister, a shadow of Olivia, would echo her complaints, while their father stayed silent, sipping beer. And Emily? She'd be carrying trays of tea or coffee, her hands shaking, her smile plastered on like a mask. I pictured her offering a plate of sandwiches, only for Olivia to wave it away. "We're not hungry," she'd snap, then turn to James. "This place needs work. It's not ours yet." That word, ours, would hit Emily like a slap, but she'd swallow it, nodding, always nodding. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The house was hers. I'd made sure of it. The deed was in her name, not James's. But they were already claiming it, like vultures circling a carcass. A memory hit me: Emily at 10, dropping a glass at a family picnic. It shattered, and she froze, expecting a scolding. Instead, I'd knelt beside her, picking up the pieces. "It's just a glass," I'd said. "You're what matters." Now, I imagined her in that house, something breaking, a plate, a cup, maybe a toy from her childhood. I saw it falling from a box, cracking on the floor, and Emily staring at it, her eyes wet. That image burned, fueling the anger I'd buried for too long. I grabbed my phone and dialed her again. It rang twice before she answered, her voice low. "Dad, now's not great." In the background, Olivia's voice rose, demanding something about towels. James laughed again, cruel and careless. "Everything okay?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Emily paused, then whispered, "It's fine. I'll call you tomorrow." The line went dead, and I stood there, the phone warm in my hand, her lie echoing in my head. Olivia's finger jabbed at the kitchen table. "Is that dirt? You can't even keep this place clean, Emily." I wasn't there to see it, but Emily's voice on the phone painted the scene clear as day. She'd called me that morning, her words clipped, like she was afraid to breathe too loud. "They're still unpacking," she said, but the strain in her tone told me it was worse than that. I stood in my kitchen, gripping the counter, the coffee I'd poured growing cold. It was the next day, and the house, Emily's house, had turned into a battlefield. I could imagine her there, scrubbing dishes in the sink, her sleeves rolled up, sweat beading on her forehead. The kitchen would smell of burnt toast and sour milk, plates piled high from a breakfast she hadn't been invited to share. Olivia's heels would click on the hardwood, each step a judgment. "This is your mess," she'd say, pointing at a spotless counter, her lips curling. Emily would nod, biting her lip, her hands raw from washing. "They're just particular," Emily told me, her voice barely above a whisper. I heard James in the background, his tone lazy, mocking. You missed a spot. Don't make my mom do your job." My blood boiled, but I kept my voice calm. "You don't have to do everything, sweetheart. It's your house." She laughed, a hollow sound. "It's fine, Dad. I've got it." But she didn't. I could hear it, the weight of their demands crushing her. I pictured the scene unfolding. Emily would be wiping down the table, her movements slow, deliberate, like she was trying to disappear. Olivia would hover, her eyes narrowed, picking at every detail. "These plates are chipped," she'd snap, holding one up like evidence in a trial. Emily would mumble an apology, her cheeks burning, and keep scrubbing. James would be sprawled in the living room, scrolling on his phone, ignoring her pleas for help. "It's your house, right?" he'd say, his smirk audible even from where I stood. I remembered Emily before James, when she'd been fierce, unafraid. At 20, she'd argued with contractors at my firm, her voice steady, her ideas sharp. Marriage had dulled that spark, and I hadn't stopped it. I'd trusted her to find her way, but now, imagining her in that kitchen, I saw a stranger, small, silent, broken. My hands shook as I set the coffee mug down, its handle chipped from years of use. Back at the house, I imagined Emily trying to assert herself. "Can you help with the dishes?" she'd ask James, her voice soft but firm. He'd laugh, not even looking up. "Why? You're doing fine." Olivia would chime in, her tone icy. "Don't expect my son to clean up after you." Emily's shoulders would slump, and she'd turn back to the sink, the water splashing her wrists. A spoon would slip from her fingers, clattering to the floor with a sharp ring, a sound like her dignity breaking. The image hit me hard. I saw her kneeling to pick it up, her hands trembling, while Olivia's shadow loomed over her. The keys to the house, the ones I'd given her, would be in her pocket, their weight a reminder of what she'd lost. She'd clutch them sometimes, I bet, like a lifeline, but they couldn't protect her from this. Not from James's cruelty, not from Olivia's venom. I dialed her again, unable to wait. The phone rang 3 times before she answered, her voice hushed. "Dad, I'm in the middle of," Olivia's voice cut through, shrill. "Emily, the towels are still damp. Do I have to do everything myself?" Emily stifled a breath, and I gripped the phone tighter. "You don't sound okay," I said. She paused, and I could almost see her, standing in the hallway, the door half closed, her eyes darting. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice cracked, a hairline fracture in her facade. "I'll call you tomorrow." The line went dead, and I stood frozen, the silence of my cottage pressing in. I saw her clearly now, alone in that house, surrounded by people who treated her like a ghost. My anger flared, hot and sharp, but beneath it was something else, resolve. I'd given her that house to make her happy, but James and his family had turned it into a prison. Their smiles, their gloating, flashed in my mind. I swore then, staring at the chipped mug on my counter, that I'd wipe those smiles off their faces. Whatever it took. The phone rattled on the kitchen table, and my heart clenched. Emily's voice, hoarse and broken, spilled through the speaker. "Dad, I can't do this anymore. They're treating me like I'm nothing." Her words cracked, each one a shard of glass. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles whitening, as she whispered about the dishes, the orders, Olivia's sharp tongue. The cottage around me felt too small, its wooden floors creaking under my pacing feet, the air thick with the scent of cold coffee. "Sweetheart, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice low, though rage boiled beneath it. She sobbed, a sound that tore at me. "I didn't want you to worry. Please, Dad, don't come here. It'll make it worse." Her plea was desperate, but it only fueled the fire in my chest. I saw her in that house, her hands red from scrubbing, her eyes downcast while James and his family lorded over her. My house. Her home. "I'll fix this," I said, my tone steady, though my hands shook. "I promise." She sniffled, murmuring, "Just, don't do anything rash." The call ended, and I stood frozen, the phone warm in my palm. The cottage was quiet, save for the tick of the old clock on the mantel. A photo of Emily at 10, grinning with paint on her cheeks, stared at me from the wall. I'd failed her once, trusting James, believing he'd care for her. Never again. 20 years ago, a business partner had betrayed me, siphoning funds and leaving me scrambling to save the firm. I'd trusted him, just as I'd trusted James to be a decent husband. That betrayal had hardened me, taught me to see through smiles and promises. Now, as I stared at Emily's photo, I felt that old resolve return, sharper, colder. James and Olivia had crossed a line, and they'd regret it. I paced to the window, the evening sky bruising purple over Greenwich. The coffee mug on the table trembled as I brushed past, leaving wet rings on the wood. My mind raced, piecing together what Emily had said, Olivia's commands, James's mockery, the way they'd claimed her space. The deed was in her name, I'd made sure of it, but they were acting like they owned it. Like they owned her. I grabbed the photo from the wall, my thumb tracing Emily's smile. She'd been so happy when I gave her the keys, her eyes bright with dreams of roses and family dinners. Now she was a shadow, begging me to stay away. My grip tightened, the frame creaking. I couldn't sit here, stewing in this quiet house, while she suffered. I had to see her, to face them, even if she didn't want me to. The keys to my car jangled as I snatched them from the counter, their weight familiar in my pocket. I pulled on my coat, the fabric catching on my shoulder, and stepped outside. The air was sharp, biting at my face as I locked the cottage door. Its hinges groaned, a sound that echoed the ache in my chest. I slid into the car, the leather seats cold, and started the engine. The dashboard glowed, casting shadows across my hands as they gripped the wheel. I drove through Stamford's quiet streets, the houses blurring past, their windows warm with light. My mind churned, replaying Emily's voice, her fear, her shame. I saw Olivia's smug face, James's lazy grin, and my jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. They thought they could bully her, humiliate her, and I'd just stand by. They were wrong. The road to Emily's house stretched ahead, the streetlights flickering like warnings. I didn't know what I'd say when I got there, or what I'd do, but I couldn't let her face this alone. The keys in my pocket pressed against my thigh, a reminder of the promise I'd made, to give her a home, a life, a future. I'd fight for that, no matter what it took. I pounded on the door, my fist thudding against the wood like a gavel. The house loomed dark, its windows reflecting the last of the evening light. Olivia opened the door, her smile sharp as a blade, her perfume heavy in the air. "Richard," she drawled, leaning against the frame. "What a surprise." Her tone dripped with mockery, but I pushed past her into the living room, my boots scuffing the hardwood Emily had chosen. The room was a mess, boxes stacked haphazardly, a glass of wine abandoned on the coffee table, cigarette smoke lingering like a fog. James lounged on the couch, his phone glowing in his hand, while Emily stood in the corner, her arms crossed, her eyes wide with panic. "Dad," she whispered, shaking her head, but I didn't stop. "You need to leave," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "This is Emily's house. Not yours." Olivia laughed, a cold, brittle sound, and tapped her nail on the table like a judge's gavel. "Oh, Richard. You're so dramatic." James looked up, his smirk lazy. "You heard her. Chill out, old man." I stepped closer, my hands balling into fists. "You've got no right to treat her like this. Pack your things and get out." Emily's breath hitched, but she didn't move. Olivia crossed her arms, her necklace glinting as she tilted her head. "And who's going to make us?" "You." Her voice was all venom, her eyes daring me to try. James stood, tossing his phone onto the couch. "You're out of your depth, Richard." He reached into a box and pulled out a stack of papers, waving them like a flag. "This says we stay. Legally." I froze, my eyes locking on the documents. The font was off, the paper too crisp, but the words, "property transfer," hit like a punch. "What is that?" I demanded, my voice low. "Our claim," Olivia said, stepping closer, her heels clicking. "You thought we'd just walk away?" James grinned, tossing the papers onto the table. One sheet slid to the floor, and he scrambled to grab it, his confidence flickering. Emily's eyes darted between us, her hands twisting her sleeve. "Dad, please," she whispered, but I couldn't look at her. "Not yet." "Those are fake," I said, though my throat tightened. "You can't forge your way into her home." James laughed, but it was forced, his eyes flicking to Olivia. "Tell that to a judge," he said. Olivia nodded, her smile widening. "Run along, Richard. You're embarrassing yourself." I remembered the day Emily first saw this house, her laugh echoing in the empty rooms as she planned where to hang pictures. Now, those same rooms felt like a cage, her dreams buried under boxes and lies. My chest burned, but I forced myself to breathe. They thought they'd won, with their smug faces and flimsy papers. They were wrong. "You're not welcome here," I said, my voice steady now. "And I'll prove it." I turned to Emily, her face pale, her eyes wet. "I'm not done," I told her, soft enough for only her to hear. She nodded, barely, her lips trembling. Olivia clapped slowly, mockingly. "Such a hero," she said. James snorted, clutching the documents like a shield. I walked out, the door slamming behind me, its echo sharp in the quiet night. The air bit at my face as I crossed the driveway. My keys digging into my palm. I slid into the car, the engine roaring to life, and sat there, staring at the house. Their laughter echoed in my head, but so did Emily's whisper. I'd come back. I'd make them pay. The road stretched dark ahead, and I drove, my mind already turning over what to do next. The phone rang, and Olivia's voice sliced through like a winter wind. "You're making a mistake, Richard. Keep pushing, and we'll bury you in court." I sat in my cottage, the fire crackling in the hearth, its warmth doing nothing to ease the chill her words brought. The room smelled of cedar and coffee, the old clock ticking on the mantel. "Your documents won't hold up," I said, my voice calm, though my fingers tightened around the phone. She laughed, a sound like breaking ice. "Oh, they're real enough. Ask any lawyer." In the background, James chimed in, his tone smug. "Give it up, old man. You're not winning this." I pictured them in Emily's house, their boxes cluttering her space, their voices drowning out her own. My jaw clenched, but I kept silent, letting Olivia ramble about lawsuits and legal fees. "Stay out of our way," she finished, "or you'll regret it." The line went dead. I set the phone down, my hand steady now. The cottage was quiet, its walls lined with memories, Emily's drawings, her graduation photo, a snapshot of us at the beach. I'd brought her here last night, after she called, her voice small and desperate. "Dad, can you come get me?" she'd asked, and I'd driven to her house in minutes, finding her on the porch with a single bag, her eyes red. She'd looked like a refugee, fleeing her own home. Now, she was asleep upstairs, safe for the moment. I'd carried her bag inside, its zipper broken, her clothes spilling out. We'd sat by the fire, her head on my shoulder, and I'd promised her we'd fix this. "I'm so sorry," she'd whispered, her voice thick with guilt. "You gave me the house, and I let them ruin it." I'd hugged her tight, my throat burning. "It's not your fault," I'd said. "It's theirs." I stood, the floorboards creaking, and walked to the window. The morning was gray, the trees bare against the sky. Olivia's threat echoed in my mind, those documents flashing like a warning. They were fake, I was sure of it, but they'd scared Emily, made her doubt herself. I remembered her at 15, standing up to a bully at school, her chin high. I'd been so proud then, rushing to her defense, just as I would now. She was still that girl, somewhere beneath the fear. My phone buzzed again, Emily, awake now, her voice soft. "Dad, are you okay?" I forced a smile she couldn't see. "Better now that you're here. Want some coffee?" She hesitated, then said, "I'll be down." I heard her footsteps above, slow and heavy, and my resolve hardened. Olivia and James thought they could intimidate us, hide behind their lies. They didn't know me. Not yet. I moved to the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 mugs, the steam curling like a ghost. The fire's glow lit the room, casting shadows on the walls. Emily came downstairs, her hair tangled, her eyes puffy but clear. She took the mug, her fingers brushing mine, and we sat at the table, the silence heavy but warm. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We fight," I said, my tone firm. "They don't get to take your home." Her eyes searched mine, and for the first time in days, I saw a spark of hope. She nodded, sipping her coffee, her hands steady now. I glanced at the photo on the mantel, us with my wife, years ago, laughing under a summer sky. Emily had her mother's smile, her strength. I'd protect that, no matter what. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, and walked to the mantel, touching the photo's frame. Olivia's voice, James's smirk, their forged papers, they thought they'd won. But I was just getting started. My hand closed around the edge of the table, my mind already mapping out the next step, the first move in a game they didn't know they'd started. I poured tea, the steam curling like a faint mist, but Emily's hands trembled as she took the cup. Wrapped in a plaid blanket, she sat on the couch, her eyes red and swollen. "It's my fault," she whispered, staring at the floor. "I let them take the house." The words hit me like a slap, and I set the kettle down, the cottage's quiet broken only by the crackle of the fire. Outside, rain tapped the windows, a soft rhythm against the evening's gray. "None of this is your fault," I said, sitting beside her. My voice was firm, but my chest ached. The living room smelled of cedar and chamomile, the old clock on the mantel ticking steadily. Emily's hair was tangled, her face pale, but she was here, safe in my Greenwich cottage. Last night, I'd brought her from that house, her house, where James and Olivia had turned her into a stranger. Now, we had to fight back. She shook her head, clutching the cup. "I should have stood up to them. To James." Her voice cracked, and I took her hand, her fingers cold against mine. "You trusted him," I said. "That's not weakness. It's what good people do." Her eyes met mine, searching, and I saw the girl she'd been, laughing on a fishing trip years ago, her mother's braids swinging as we reeled in a trout. After my wife died, I'd promised Emily I'd always protect her. I'd failed once, letting James into her life. Not again. I remembered that fishing trip, the lake glinting under the sun, Emily's small hands gripping the rod. "You'll always keep me safe, right, Dad?" she'd asked. I'd nodded, my throat tight. Now, sitting here, I felt that same vow burning in me. The house was hers, its white walls, its garden, its promise of a fresh start. I'd given it to her, and I'd take it back. "We need a plan," I said, squeezing her hand. "They think they've won, but they're wrong." Emily's lips twitched, a faint smile breaking through. "What can we do?" "Those documents," her voice faltered, and I saw the fear in her eyes, the weight of James's forged papers. "They're not real," I said, though I hadn't proved it yet. "We'll find a way." I stood, crossing to the table where my keys lay, their metal glinting in the firelight. The cottage felt warm, its shelves lined with books and photos, Emily's childhood, our family before everything changed. "I know someone," I said, my mind settling on Linda Russell, an attorney I'd met years ago. "She's sharp. She'll know where to start." Emily nodded, sipping her tea, the cup warming her hands. It was a small thing, but it felt like a step, a spark of hope. "What if they fight back?" she asked, her voice small. "They will," I said, meeting her gaze. "But so will we." Her smile grew, fragile but real, and she leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her, the blanket soft under my fingers. Outside, the rain grew heavier, drumming against the door, but in here, we were steady, plotting our next move. I grabbed my phone, scrolling to Linda's number. "I'll call her tomorrow," I said. Emily looked up, her eyes brighter now. "You really think we can do this?" she asked. "I know we can," I said, my voice carrying a certainty I hadn't felt in days. She nodded, her grip on the cup tightening, and I knew she believed me. I dialed Linda's number, the phone cool against my ear. The line rang, and I glanced at Emily, her face lit by the fire's glow. The rain pounded harder, a curtain closing us off from the world. Linda's voicemail clicked on, and I left a message, my voice steady. "It's Richard Collins. I need your help." I hung up, taking Emily's hand again, and we sat there, the future uncertain but ours to shape. I stepped into Linda Russell's office, the glass door hissing shut behind me. The space was sleek, polished wood, a glass desk, the faint smell of coffee drifting from a machine in the corner. Outside, Stamford's skyline gleamed through panoramic windows, the city humming below. Linda, her glasses perched on her nose, slid a folder across the desk. "Those documents?" "Fake," she said, her voice crisp. "But we need hard proof." My chest loosened, a weight lifting, though the fight was far from over. I sat, the leather chair creaking, and flipped through the folder, copies of James's papers, their edges too clean, the signatures uneven. "How do we prove it?" I asked, my fingers brushing the pages. Linda leaned back, her pen tapping the desk. "Forgeries leave trails. Inconsistent dates, mismatched fonts. I've seen it before." Her confidence steadied me, but her next words sharpened my focus. "We need more than that to bury them. Something personal." I nodded, my mind racing. The office felt bright, almost sterile, but Linda's presence grounded it, her sharp eyes, her no-nonsense tone. I'd called her yesterday, after that rainy night with Emily, and she'd agreed to meet right away. Now, here we were, mapping out a war. "What do you suggest?" I asked. She smiled, a glint in her eye. "A detective. Someone to dig into their lives. People like Olivia always have skeletons." The word skeletons hung in the air, and I saw Olivia's smug face, her heels clicking in Emily's house. I remembered years ago, when colleagues laughed off my ideas at the firm, calling me a dreamer. I'd rebuilt that business, brick by brick, proving them wrong. Now, James and Olivia thought they could outsmart me, steal what I'd given my daughter. They'd learn the same lesson. "Know anyone good?" I asked. Linda slid a business card across the desk, the name Mark Wilson printed in bold. "He's a pit bull," she said. "Expensive, but worth it." I pocketed the card, its edges bending in my hand like a ticket to justice. My phone buzzed, Emily, her voice soft but anxious. "Dad, any news?" I glanced at Linda, who nodded, and stepped to the window, the city sprawling below. "We're making progress," I told Emily, keeping my tone light. "Linda's on it." I heard her exhale, a small sound of relief. "You're sure we can trust her?" she asked. "Absolutely," I said, my eyes on the folder. "Just hang tight." She paused, then whispered, "Thanks, Dad." The call ended, and I turned back to Linda, who was already jotting notes. "We'll file a motion to challenge the documents," she said, her pen scratching. "Mark will handle the dirt. If Olivia or James have secrets, he'll find them." I nodded, my hand brushing the card in my pocket. The office's hum, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, felt like a pulse, pushing us forward. I saw Emily's face, her faint smile from last night, and knew this was worth every penny, every risk. Linda stood, extending her hand. "We've got this, Richard. Go home to Emily." I shook her hand, her grip firm, and grabbed the folder. The glass door swung open as I left, the city's noise rushing in. I stepped onto the sidewalk, the morning air sharp, and pulled out Mark's card again. His number stared back, a promise of answers. I tucked it away, my steps quickening, the weight of the folder under my arm a reminder of the fight ahead. Rain drummed on my hood as I stood under an oak in the Stamford Park, its branches sagging with wet leaves. Mark Wilson approached, his trench coat flapping, a manila envelope in his hand. "Olivia's not as clean as she thinks," he said, his voice dry, a smirk tugging at his lips. He handed me the envelope, its edges damp, and I felt its weight, light, but heavy with possibility. The air smelled of mud and pine, the park quiet save for the distant hum of traffic. I opened the flap, my fingers brushing the glossy photos inside. Olivia, stepping out of a hotel, her arm linked with a man who wasn't her husband. Another shot, her laughing, her head tilted close to his. My pulse quickened, a grim smile spreading. "How'd you get these?" I asked, glancing up. Mark shrugged, lighting a cigarette, the flame flickering. "Tailed her for a week. She's sloppy. Meets him every Tuesday, same place." His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp, watching my reaction. I slipped the photos back, the envelope crinkling like dry leaves. The rain slowed, a drizzle now, pooling on the bench nearby. I saw Olivia's face in my mind, her smug grin as she waved those forged documents. These photos were her weakness, a crack in her armor. I remembered a friend from the firm, years ago, who'd begged forgiveness after skimming profits. I'd let him go, too soft then. Not now. Olivia would get no mercy. "How solid is this?" I asked, tucking the envelope under my coat. Mark exhaled smoke, the cloud dissolving in the damp air. "Solid enough to scare her. She's terrified of losing face." He flicked the cigarette into a puddle. "It's his sharp. Use it wisely." I nodded, my mind already turning over how to wield this weapon. Not yet, though. I needed the right moment. My phone buzzed, Emily, her voice tight. "Dad, any updates?" I stepped under the tree's canopy, shielding the phone. "We're getting there," I said, keeping it vague. "Trust me." She paused, then said, "I do." Her words warmed me, despite the chill. "I'll call soon," I promised, hanging up. Mark raised an eyebrow. "Your daughter?" he asked. I nodded, and he didn't press, just tipped his hat and walked off, his coat blending into the dusk. I stood alone, the park darkening, the rain a faint patter now. The envelope pressed against my chest, a secret that could unravel Olivia's control. I thought of Emily, safe in the cottage, her hope fragile but growing. These photos were a start, a lever to pry James and his family out of her life. I'd given her that house to build a future, and I'd tear down anyone who tried to steal it. I walked to my car, the gravel crunching under my boots. The air inside was thick with the scent of leather, the dashboard glowing as I started the engine. I set the envelope on the passenger seat, its corner curling slightly. The road stretched ahead, slick with rain, the headlights cutting through the gloom. My hands gripped the wheel, steady, but my mind raced, plotting the next move, the moment I'd face Olivia and watch her facade crumble. I slammed my fist against the door, the wood shuddering under the force. The envelope in my other hand felt like a grenade, its contents ready to blow Olivia's world apart. The house, Emily's house, stood dark, its curtains drawn, but I knew they were inside. "Open up!" I shouted, my voice echoing across the quiet Stamford Street. Emily stood behind me, her breath uneven, her hand brushing mine for courage. The door creaked open, and Olivia's face appeared, her smirk faltering when she saw my expression. "You've got 10 minutes to get out," I said, stepping into the living room. The air was stale, thick with the smell of old coffee and cigarette smoke. Boxes cluttered the floor, a half-empty wineglass teetered on the table. James lounged on the couch, his phone glowing, but he sat up, eyes narrowing. "What's this about, old man?" he snapped. I tossed the envelope onto the table, a single photo sliding out, Olivia, arm in arm with a stranger, her laugh frozen in grainy color. Olivia's face drained of color, her hand twitching toward the photo. "Where did you get that?" she hissed, her voice low, almost a growl. I met her gaze, unflinching. "Doesn't matter. It's going online unless you leave. Now." Emily stepped forward, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. "This is my house," she said, her eyes locked on James. "You don't belong here." James laughed, but it was brittle, his hands clenching. "You think you can scare us with some pictures? We've got documents. Legal ones." I shook my head, pulling out my phone. "The police are on their way. Forgery's a crime, James. So is harassment." It was a bluff, I hadn't called them yet, but Olivia's eyes widened, her composure cracking. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered, but her voice shook. I remembered Emily at 6, hiding behind me when a neighbor's dog barked too loud. I'd knelt, promising to keep her safe, and that vow burned in me now. Olivia and James had humiliated her, stolen her home, but they'd underestimated me. "You chose this," I said, my voice cold. "I'm giving you one chance to walk away." Olivia lunged for the photo, but Emily grabbed it first, holding it like a shield. "No more lies," she said, her voice rising. James stood, his face red, fists balled. "You're bluffing. You've got nothing." But his eyes darted to Olivia, who was trembling, her nails digging into her palms. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't do this. We'll go." The words were a surrender, and I felt a grim satisfaction. Emily's hand found mine, her grip tight, and I squeezed back, proud of her strength. "You've got 5 minutes now," I said, stepping back. Olivia's shoulders slumped, her eyes wet with panic. James cursed, kicking a box, its contents spilling across the floor. Emily stayed by my side. Her chin high, no longer the broken woman they tried to make her. The room felt smaller, their power shrinking with every second. I turned, guiding Emily toward the door, but her voice stopped me. "Wait," she said, facing them. "You'll never control me again." We stepped onto the porch, the night air cool against my skin. I clutched the keys to the house, their metal warm in my pocket. Inside, Olivia's voice rose, sharp and desperate, arguing with James. "This is your fault," she screamed, and his shout back was muffled, frantic. Emily leaned against me, her breath steady now, and I knew we'd won this round. But I didn't turn back. The keys in my hand were enough, their weight a promise of what came next. Olivia's scream tore through the house, a jagged edge to her voice. "This is on you, James. You ruined everything." I stood on the porch with Emily, the night air damp from recent rain, the grass glistening under the streetlights. Inside, a suitcase thudded to the floor, its clasp snapping open, dresses spilling onto the lawn like discarded dreams. James stormed out, dragging a box, his face flushed with rage. "Don't pin this on me," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You and your secrets." Emily's hand rested on my arm, her touch light but firm. She watched them, her eyes steady, no longer clouded with fear. The house, her house, loomed behind us, its windows catching the glow of the chaos inside. Neighbors peeked from their porches, their murmurs a soft hum in the quiet street. I felt a surge of pride as Emily stepped forward, her voice clear. "This is my home," she said, addressing James as he shoved boxes into his car. "You don't get to take it." Olivia stumbled out, her hair wild, a scarf trailing from her bag. "You think you've won?" she spat, but her eyes darted to the neighbors, her voice trembling. Emily didn't flinch. "I have," she said, her words like a blade. Olivia froze, then turned on James, her nails digging into his arm. "Get the car ready, you idiot." James yanked free, cursing, and tossed a lamp into the trunk, its shade crumpling. I remembered Emily at 17, standing up to a friend who'd betrayed her trust, her voice shaking but firm. I'd been proud then, just as I was now. She'd found that strength again, and I stood beside her, my hand on her shoulder, watching their empire crumble. The suitcase on the lawn lay open, a pair of heels glinting in the grass, a symbol of Olivia's shattered control. "They're done," I whispered, and Emily nodded, her lips curving into a faint smile. James slammed the trunk, his hands shaking. "We're not finished," he growled, but his eyes avoided Emily's. Olivia climbed into the car, her face a mask of fury, and barked at James to hurry. A neighbor across the street, Mrs. Larson, stepped onto her lawn, arms crossed, watching. "Good riddance," she muttered, loud enough for us to hear. I caught her eye and nodded, grateful for the silent support. Get in. Olivia shouted, and James obeyed, his shoulders hunched. The car's engine roared, its headlights slicing through the dusk. Emily clutched the house keys, their metal glinting in her hand, and I saw the woman she was becoming, strong, unbroken. "They're gone," she said, her voice soft but certain. I squeezed her shoulder, my chest tight with relief. The car peeled away, tires screeching, and the street fell quiet. Neighbors retreated, their curtains twitching, but their presence lingered, a shield around us. Emily turned to the house, its door still open, light spilling onto the porch. "It's mine again," she said, almost to herself. I nodded, the keys in her hand, a promise kept. She stepped forward, her silhouette framed by the doorway, and I followed, ready to help her reclaim what was hers. Emily laughed, dirt smudging her hands as we planted roses in the garden. The May sun warmed the earth, the air sweet with the scent of fresh soil and blooming flowers. "These are perfect," she said, patting the ground around a sapling, its petals swaying like tiny flags of victory. The house behind us, her house, gleamed, its white walls fresh with paint, new curtains fluttering in the open windows. I wiped sweat from my brow, my fingers gritty. And grinned. We were rebuilding, piece by piece. Inside, the living room smelled of baked bread, a loaf cooling on the counter. Emily had spent the morning arranging photos, her childhood sketches now framed on the walls. The chaos of James and Olivia was gone, their boxes cleared, the floors polished to a shine. A month ago, she'd signed the divorce papers, the last chain broken. The house was hers, legally, fully, and she'd made it a home again. "Need more soil?" I asked, hefting a bag. She shook her head, her ponytail swinging. "We're good, Dad." Her smile was bright, the kind I hadn't seen since before James. I remembered the day I bought this place, picturing her here, happy, safe. That dream had nearly slipped away, but we'd fought for it, together. Now, watching her dig, her hands steady, I knew every sacrifice was worth it. A neighbor, Mr. Carter, waved from across the street, a pie in his hands. "Welcome back, Emily," he called, crossing the lawn. She stood, brushing dirt from her jeans, and took the pie with a grin. "Thanks, Tom," she said, her voice warm. Other neighbors had stopped by all week, bringing food, offering help, their support a quiet strength. Stamford wasn't just a place, it was a community, and they'd chosen her side. We carried the pie inside, the kitchen bright with sunlight. Emily set it on the counter, her keys clinking beside it, their engraved "Emily" catching the light. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, turning to me. Her eyes were clear, no trace of the fear that had haunted them. I pulled her into a hug, her hair tickling my chin. "You're stronger than you know," I said, my voice thick. She squeezed me back, then stepped away, her smile fierce. "I'll be stronger now. I promise." I thought of her at 10, sketching this house on a napkin, her dreams so big. I'd sold half my life to make them real, and standing here, in a home filled with her laughter, I felt whole. The garden outside bloomed, roses nodding in the breeze, a symbol of her new start. "Want to finish the planting?" I asked. She nodded, grabbing a trowel, and we headed back out, the sun climbing higher. Later, we sat on the porch, the sky streaked with orange and pink. The house glowed behind us, its windows open, its warmth spilling out. Emily leaned against me, her hand brushing mine. "This is home," she said, her voice soft but sure. I nodded, my throat tight, and watched the sunset, its light bathing the garden, the street, the life we'd reclaimed. The keys rested on the table inside, no longer a battleground, just a promise kept. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.